This podcast is brought to you by the Deluxe Edition Network. To find more great shows on our network, head over to theden.show.
Hold on, stop. Welcome back to the Shit Show 2.0.
Okay, boomer.
Damn millennials. Wow.
Did not know that.
Even flirters who are obviously mentally ill.
You want to be my wife?
Oh, this is going to go downhill real quick.
What is going on? And welcome to Take on the World with
Lexi.
and Mike D. Again, John is not with us.
Nope.
Love Bug is not here either, which is a shame because we are doing another wrestling topic.
We are.
And we are not turning this into a wrestling podcast. It's just once I went down the rabbit hole of research into history, it brought up a lot of emotion for me.
Mm-hmm.
So Lexi actually came up with this topic.
So I guess to preface, we'll say we knew that John was bailing this week, and Love Bag had already Love Bag,
Love Bag.
yeah, Love Bag, the douchebag. Love Bug had already said that he would not be able to make it this weekend. So we're kind of deciding what we wanted to do. If we were going to go ahead with it, we don't really want to wait because you did all this research for these topics. And I said, okay, well, what if John's not coming? How about we just pick two of our favorite wrestlers and talk about them?
So, let me just remind everybody we are on the Deluxe Edition Network. Check out the Den.show. The Den.show.
The Den.
The February Spotlight podcast is Deluxe Edition. Mm-hmm. Yet another pop culture podcast. I love these guys. Casey has been a friend of mine. He was actually a wrestler.
Did I ever meet him?
Exactly.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that's Casey.
Really?
Yeah.
No way. Interesting.
Casey's actually the one who got me into podcasting by having me on his podcast, his Chicken Duck podcast.
Thank you.
And I enjoy doing it so much that even if Lexi and John aren't here, I'm going to go ahead and go by myself. Anyway, they do a lot of cool stuff. They do interviews with pop culture icons, like people I would consider pop culture icons.
Yeah. Oh goodness.
Scarrett from Top Gun. He was the commander. Or he was the one in charge. The guy from Beastmaster.
Okay.
And he was also in B. Who else? I can't remember their names. O'Mallory, who was Emil Muzz in Dragnet. Is he okay?
Yeah.
We have two podcast therapy dogs. We have Coco down here, who is camera shy. And we have Ollie Wally,
who is a code boy, so he is hiding in the shirt.
Fix the ear for me, please.
Oh, he's hard in ear, so.
So, Deluxe Edition Network.
Yes.
Podcast of the month is Deluxe Edition. Yet another pop culture podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I love listening to it. As soon as they put one out, I'm on it. So, check out their catalog of shows because there's some really cool interviews on there. And I think they do a great job of interviewing them. And then they've also done some other shows on 80s movies, horror movies, stuff like that. Cool stuff. Check them out. So, I approached this topic that Lexi brought up, favorite wrestler. We had to pick two favorite wrestlers. And for me, that's really hard.
I just said two because I knew if we were going to talk about our favorite wrestlers, we would be here for years.
Yes. We might be here for years anyway.
For you, I kept mine nice. Mine are nice and concise. I have some nice things to say about both of these wrestlers that I chose. In addition to, but mine are very concise.
So, the way I approached it is I approached all time my favorites based on their influence in wrestling. And Because like if I thought about it, there's like 1,000 people I could pick.
Yeah. And that's kind of how I thought too.
And they all be different for different reasons. Is it my favorite technical wrestler? Is my favorite wrestling personality?
Yeah.
Is it my favorite wrestler with ring psychology? Because if you go in ring psychology, it's Jake the Snake.
Yeah.
Because Jake the Snake was a master at controlling the crowd and dominating in the ring.
Yeah.
Diamond Dallas Page was like that too.
Yep. DDP.
There were. If I'm talking about my favorite personalities, you have a guy like The Rock, which everybody's a little The Rock, but I like The Rock.
I love The Rock.
I like The Rock when he was Rocky Maivia, and nobody liked him.
Okay, but here's the thing, and it's because the character was so good.
Yeah. So, I went a little more old school. How did you approach it?
I gave myself a very strict guideline, which was my two favorite modern female wrestlers.
Okay.
So
Woman power.
Yep, I chose two modern female wrestlers that I feel like all around, from anything that I've seen, and like I follow both of these wrestlers on social media, like I have since they debuted, pretty much.
Okay.
And I really like them both as characters, and I think I like them both as people based on what I've seen as well. So I chose them for those reasons, because I feel like there hasn't always been a lot of like really, I don't want to say like good female role models in wrestling, but there aren't because of, the ease of how you can put a woman into a story. There are just like so many easy routes to take, and in some cases, both of these wrestlers have been heels. They've both been like hated in the ring, kind of.
Right.
So I feel like it shows like, that's not the personality that you put on the ring isn't necessarily what's going on the outside. Right. And I feel like for some wrestlers that's not always true, especially like back when you had people that when the industry wasn't as, fleshed out as it is. Even we talked about this last episode, but even now you don't really have like a clean drawn line for what your wrestling has to be. We just have like a good idea of what we like.
Right.
And that's when things were just kind of like I don't know, try this, try that, and we'll see how this goes. I feel like there were not as many good role models for girls in wrestling, like China. No.
Well,
she was a great wrestler. She was an okay wrestler, but
I think Lita was better than she was.
I think so too.
As a wrestler,
I think China's more well known.
She had some
in ways
luchador skill, which I liked.
Yes,
and
I've
often said when I'm watching wrestling, when I watch the female matches, the women matches,
because
I dislike them.
So and that's like the hard part, but I feel like for me, both of the women that I chose have good skill.
Okay. So why don't you pop off your first one, and then I'll jump in with my first one.
Admittedly, I did do a little bit less in the research department for the first one than I did the second one, because the second one I did just had like a lot more. She has like a longer history. So the first female wrestler that I chose is Alexa Bliss. Her name is Alexis. She goes by Lexi, so I feel like I have
a connection.
Kaufman. She was born in 1991 in Columbus, Ohio.
She's a baby.
She's a baby. She's only 3 years older than me. So she signed with WWE's Performance Center and developmental brand NXT, which is based out of Florida. NXT does travel now, and they do takeover matches in different cities. So they do like Takeover Brooklyn, New York. They do like Takeover in, like San Francisco, stuff like that. They go to like bigger cities most of the time. But I believe for the house shows that WWE still does, NXT is usually one of the opening matches. They usually have an NXT match in their house shows as well.
Okay.
So that's their developmental brand. She signed with them in 2013. This was her debut as a wrestler. It was in 2013. She didn't have she didn't wrestle for any other promotions or anything before this. This was her debut.
So she trained with
Yeah, she started with the Performance Center. I don't know where it didn't. So with Alexa, there wasn't a whole lot of information on her page about what she did before WWE.
Okay.
So I don't know that there was a whole lot to say. It didn't say any promotions that she was with or anything like that, which leads me to believe that she didn't really have a whole lot of show experience before she started with NXT, because my second choice, that's pretty much half of the research that I have, is based on the different promotions that she used to be in.
Okay.
And they're both still currently wrestling, so it's both sides kind of. So her main debut roster was on SmackDown in 2016. I believe this is right after the second brand split happened, or right before. So she became a 2-time SmackDown Women's Champion and the first woman to hold the title twice. Was the title just created during the second brand split? Sure was. Do I care? Absolutely fucking not. Look at her go. Thank you, Alexa. As Elle Woods would say, snaps for Alexa. She is awesome. I really do like her wrestling. She was notably a heel for most of her first run, her first gimmick in SmackDown. She was kind of just a bitch to the other female wrestlers, which was her gimmick. That was her thing, oh, well, I'm better than you anyway. So she, first woman to hold the SmackDown Women's Championship twice. When she was sent to the Raw side of the brand, because that was a common thing during the brand split, is they would have roster change-ups and, you guys have to trade people, and the drafts and all that. Ugh. So one of the drafts sent her over to Raw, and she proceeded to also dominate there, and she went on to have 3 title runs with the Raw Women's Championship, and she joined a tag team with Nikki Cross called the Iconics with 2 capital I's, and they won the Women's Tag Team Championship twice, setting more firsts for women's WWE history. She was the first woman to hold the Raw Women's Championship 3 times, and she and Nikki Cross were the first tag team to hold the Tag Team Championship twice.
Okay.
So holding the Raw Championship for a time, 3 times, the SmackDown Championship for a time, twice, and the Tag Team Championships twice. By the time that this happens in 2019, that made her the second women's Triple Crown champ. So earlier in 2019, WWE came out with the Triple Crown Championship, which is the Women's Triple Crown Championship, which is awarded to a female wrestler in WWE that has been the Raw Women's Champ, SmackDown Women's Champ, and Women's Tag Team Champ at some point.
So it's like the Triple Crown with horse races, so they're saying that women wrestlers are like horses.
I mean, that's probably pretty accurate. They're portrayed in here, but so she was the second Triple Crown because Bayley, another female wrestler that debuted around the same time as her from NXT onto the main roster, Bayley held the Tag Team Championship before Alexa Bliss did, even though she did not hold both of the other titles before her. But because she held all 3 of them at some point, before Alexa Bliss held the 3rd one, she got it first.
Okay.
So she's the second
Triple Crown.
champ. And that's all that I have for Alexa Bliss, because, like I said, she only had information on her page about her WWE run. Now, aside from what you see in the ring or on the TV, Alexa Bliss also works, and I mean, most WWE wrestlers do work with things like Make-A-Wish Foundation and other kinds of charities, things like that. But she does a lot of that work on the side as well. And she's really into it because, like, she looks at it like she achieved her dream by being on WWE, and she, like, her thing, and she has, I don't know how Alexa Bliss still works for WWE, because the amount of times that she breaks character in ring after she wins a championship or something, like, it's mind-boggling, but it's also so amazing because she will sit there and, like, you can see her tear up, and she's just like, this is my dream.
Yeah.
Like, I am so happy to be a part of this brand. I'm so happy, you know, to have the coworkers that I do, essentially, in whatever way that she would say it.
Right.
But, like, she has said that so many times, like, when she was supposed to be a heel, and she got the SmackDown Championship, it was like, is she allowed to do that? We're, like, waiting for them to cut? Because, like, this is on, I don't remember exactly what it was, but this is, like, on TV, right? So we're expecting them to, like, cut or something, or, you know, there's some twist, but it wasn't. It was just very genuine, and that's why I really like her. She had a gimmick for a while where she had kind of like Harley Quinn hair, where she did almost like, a lot of times they were like, just kind of slightly askew, because, I mean, you're in the ring anyway.
Yeah.
They're going to get askew, but she had two pigtails, and she did the tips of one side blue and the tips of the other's pink. So she had like a Harley Quinn kind of gimmick going on for a while.
Okay, I have seen her.
She's like, she always like looked a little bit unhinged kind of, and I really liked that gimmick. I thought it worked really, really well.
Because when I looked her picture up, I'm like, I don't know this girl.
Yeah, so they might have been even featured in the same video, because I know I've sent a couple like high flying.
Is that her?
Yeah. Her hair when she debuted, it was always in pigtails. She wears it down a lot now, and she's worn it in a ponytail as well since then, but but she has done like a lot of high flying maneuvers, stuff like that. Like she's really good at that kind of stuff too, because she's tiny. She's 5'1".
See, and that's what I think that's one of the reasons, like, women's wrestling, because of the height difference, the ring is not made for them. So when she stands against the ropes, it's hitting her neck. It's not hitting her back.
Yeah.
Because she's so small.
She's so small. She's 5'1", and I think she's billed at like 104 pounds.
And it's like, you throw 104 pounds off those tight ropes that are meant to hold 350 pounds. It doesn't, they're not giving it. So it looks like she's like hitting the ropes and kind of running off them instead of hitting the ropes and being propelled off them.
Yeah. And I think like she's kind of used that to her advantage too, where like the Iconics in their tag team, they did a lot of cheap shit.
Were they bad people?
They were heels, well, because they were the Iconics. They were better than everybody. They did it better. They could do it better. They would do it better, kind of thing.
Was their name Martial Law Mudbug?
No, but they certainly had the attitude. So they were kind of like, we won by count out, but we still won.
W's a W.
Yeah. A win's a win. Sorry, loser. Or like they'd be like the one who would have somebody come in and like somebody would interrupt the match and somebody would get disqualified and they'd win by disqualification or something. Or like, you know, the people who they'll like run to the side of the ring and put their teammate's foot on the rope when they're getting counted out or something. You know what I mean? Like one of those kinds of things. Like they were those kinds of tag team. So they did a lot of that kind of stuff, and I really liked that too, because she's always been kind of portrayed as like a little bit more squirrely because she's smaller and she has that speed. And I think that I don't really like Nikki Cross. I never really liked her, but I mean, I liked the Iconics because it was Alexa, and I'm sure I bitched about them because I don't know. I don't think I really like heels in that, like, I don't like those kinds of heels. You know what I mean? Like, I like heels like The Undertaker.
See, there's a thing in wrestling called a tweener.
Yeah, and that's kind of...
And I think you got like Stone Cold, who was obviously a heel.
Oh, yeah.
But
supposed to be.
But he really got a babyface pop every time he came out.
I guess he wasn't.
So he's a tweener.
Yeah.
He's someone in between.
And I think that stems from something else that I really love, which is Star Wars, where I've always kind of liked the idea of a gray Jedi.
A gray Jedi.
You know? We're not the light or the dark. We're the gray Jedi. Like, we just, like, don't fucking bother us and we won't bother you, bro.
Don't bother me, I won't bother you.
I like the kind of heel that's kind of, like, indifferent to other people mostly, but if you're in my way, you're in my fucking way.
What?
Yeah. So I think that's kind of why, like, I don't necessarily like the types of heel that Alexa Bliss is typically portrayed as, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure she also did have a run with Bray Wyatt while he was still in WWE, and she did, like, his, like, weird Wyatt family thing.
Yeah, that was weird.
I'm pretty sure she did that for a while. That was pretty cool, but it's cooler for her to do it than for somebody like Bray Wyatt, where it's almost like a little bit creepy, because she's a cute small girl. Like, I'm sorry, like, I love her to death, all the power to her, but she is a small, cute woman. Like, you can do her makeup, and it's gonna look great. Do her hair, it's gonna look great. Bray Wyatt's hair was always not done. And I mean, like, makes sense, right? Like, that wasn't his gimmick, but the gimmick, for me, anyway, works really, really well when you can kind of, like, dress it up a little bit, where it doesn't just look like somebody walked out of the cornfield across the street and tried to murder me. I feel like maybe it goes back to that thing where it's like a horror that is too realistic for me. I don't like.
Okay.
I don't know. But so I feel like she's very flexible. She's had a lot of different kinds of gimmicks. And I feel like a lot of talent doesn't succeed when WWE puts them in a situation that is kind of against the character that they want to be. And I don't know that I've seen that problem too often, like, because even I find myself being like, yo, I fucking hate Alexa Bliss. Like, when she's up there doing a fucking promo or something, or like they were really big into vignettes again for a while when everybody's making their debut. Like, all those, like, she's just standing in the ring like, who are you? And it's like, I fucking hate that. But that's what they're supposed to do. Like, they're supposed to make you hate them.
Yeah.
And so I feel like she's a good heel. I don't know.
If you can make people hate you, you're doing your job.
Yeah, exactly. And, like, I also love her simultaneously at the same time, so...
Tweener.
Yeah, you're doing great.
All right, so...
That's my first.
My first one...
It's going to be 3 pages long.
Oh, it's...
Oh my god, I just looked at your page count. Do you know how many pages I have on here? 4.
Because
3. There's 3.
Well, I started on page 4 with mine.
Yeah.
So... But there's a reason for that. Your young lady has been in the business for 9 years.
Well, exactly. And when we get to my second choice, I talk about that a little bit more, where you almost kind of forgot that she had a different time frame in WWE.
My number 1 was born in 1935.
Wow, that's only like a couple years from when you were born.
Yeah. Bruno Sammartino. When we talked about this, I'm like, who can I say was, like, I remember the most, and, like, made me want to be a wrestler. And it was Bruno Sammartino. He was born in Abruzzo, Italy, in October 6, 1935. He and his family hid in the mountains during World War II from the Nazi soldiers.
Which is amazing.
He moved to the United States, to the great city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
What?
In 1951.
Oh my god, did you know I've been to Pittsburgh?
Have you?
Yeah.
Get out of here. He was kind of sickly from years of hiding in the mountains.
Right, like you become small, and like, have you ever seen pictures?
He had a slight frame. He had broken English because he learned English when he got here.
Right.
It made him a target for bullying in school.
Which is complete bullshit. Because, like, I speak a whole second language. What are you doing, Jimmy? Picking your nose? Gee.
So, he devoted himself to weight training. And with that powerlifting prowess that he had, it almost earned him a spot in the 1956 U.S. Olympic team.
That's amazing.
He was edged out by Paul Anderson, who outweighed him by 70 pounds. So you got someone who's 70 pounds heavier than him.
Somebody 70 pounds heavier than Bruno Sammartino to take his place in the Olympics.
So his high school did not have a wrestling team. So he worked out at the University of Pittsburgh with their wrestling team under legendary coach Rex Perry. He was known around the Pittsburgh area for doing strongman stunts and even appeared on a television show doing the same thing. That appearance on that show grabbed the attention of wrestling promoter Rudy Miller, who recruited him for professional wrestling.
Okay.
Bruno began wrestling for a local promotion with a local TV presence. It was studio wrestling on WIIC TV, Channel 11.
Oh, I remember. In 1959.
In 1959. And he became an instant star. The territory was owned independently of Vince Sr.'s New York-based WWF, but eventually Bruno was brought into the WWF, and he worked with such national stars as Gorilla Monsoon, George the Animal Steel, Bobo Brazil. I don't know if anybody's going to know these other guys. Johnny Valiant.
Oh, okay.
Johnny Valiant has a brother who wrestled, Jimmy Valiant, who I actually got to work with.
Were they twins?
They're not twins, but
Jimmy and Johnny.
He was such a cool dude.
Oh my gosh, maybe John can get me Jimmy John's.
Maybe.
Is John's name John Jimmy?
No. It's John Michael.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so stupid. His mom named him after you.
Yeah, I know.
Weird.
Bruno then actually bought the promotion. He bought into the promotion and the Pittsburgh promotion and sold it, but then bought it back again in the 70s. In 1974, he sold it to Vince Sr. when he became part of the WWF territory. WWF territory.
WWW.
So he made major headlines and became the first and only man to lift 600-pound Haystack Calhoun and slam him.
That's insane.
He won the WWF World Championship title on May 17th, 1963. He defeated Nature Boy Buddy Rogers in 48 seconds. He kept this title for an incredible 7 years, 8 months, and 1 day.
I said it was almost 8 years.
Yeah.
I said that earlier, and I was so right. Yeah. It was almost 8 years.
Now, this says it still stands as the longest continuous world title reign in wrestling history. Now,
including in the NWA, as we know, because I looked up in the last episode.
Okay. But the NWA, someone had the title longer, but it switched. The title switched. It wasn't the same title.
Yeah, that's why.
So Sammartino was clearly the most popular wrestler in northeastern United States in the 60s and 70s. Like, he would headline a show at Madison Square Gardens on a monthly basis, and they would fill out. They would sell out. He battled top heels of his day, including Killer Kowalski, Giant Bubba, Gene Kiniski, Dr. Bill Miller, Bull Ramos, I don't know this guy, Waldo Von Erich, Crusher, Johnny Valiant, the Sheik, which is the Iron Sheik.
The Iron Sheik, yeah.
Who he was my manager when I walked to the ring for the NW. What was it? Not NWA. The tag team titles. Wow. I can't remember the promotion. I'm getting old.
ECW?
No, it was...
WCW?
No, it was down in New York.
Down in New York?
NCW. That was
close. I was getting there.
Freddie Blassie, Gorilla Monsoon, and George the Animal Steel. Finally, on January 18th, 1971, Sammartino lost the title at Madison Square Garden to Ivan Koloff.
This podcast is brought to you by Bear Claw Kitchen. Head on over to bearclawkitchen.com and check out their amazing selection of granola bars and granola snack packs. They also have hazel and spice granola butter, maple syrup, pancake mix, and a few different flavors of jam. So, once again, head over to bearclawkitchen.com and use code DELUXE15 at checkout to save 15% off your entire order. And then, it's time to devour and claw on.
When he lost that title to Ivan Koloff in 1971, the crowd was so stunned they were completely silent. He actually thought that his hearing was damaged during the match, and the reaction of the crowd actually caused them not to announce Koloff's victory to the crowd in fear that they would start a riot.
Oh God! So just like
they were like, What the fuck just happened?
Why? Why did he lose? Like, well, he has to lose eventually, right?
So in December 10th, 1973, he regained the WWF Championship, defeating Stan Stasiak. He went on to defend it against like Bruiser Brody, Ken Patera, Bugsy McGraw, Baron Don Reich, Ivan Koloff, Superstar Billy Graham, Nikita Koloff, who also walked me to the ring, or Volkov, who walked me to the ring. His second title run lasted 3 years, 4 months, and 20 days. In April 1976, he wrestled Stan Hansen, and Stan Hansen dropped him on his neck and fractured his neck.
Ow.
He didn't body slam him properly.
Of course.
In June 1976, WWF booked Ali versus Antonio Inoki match. Gate sales were not what they thought they would be, so they rushed San Martino to recovery and put him in a rematch against Stan Stasiak.
Hansen.
No. I thought it was Stan Stasiak.
Stan Hansen.
Stan Hansen. So they actually financially they saved the show because the gates sold out as soon as.
Of course, but.
And they had something called closed circuit, which I guess was like pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm. That sounds about right. Closed circuits sounds like pay-per-view.
So this is his third WWF championship reign, ended April 30th, 1977, when he was defeated by Superstar Billy Graham. It was a controversial ending because Billy Graham had his both feet on the ropes while he was pinning San Martino.
And that's illegal.
Yeah. So one of the most emotionally charged feuds Bruno's career started in 1980 when his former student Larry Zbyszko violently turned against him, and it was broadcast on the WWF Championship Wrestling show. I think that might have been a Friday night show. Bruno was shocked and hurt by Zbyszko's betrayal, and he vowed to make Zbyszko, who Bruno described as Judas, pay dearly. The record-setting series culminated on August 9th, 1980, in front of 36,295 fans at Shea Stadium.
That's 9 months.
As the main event of the Federation Showdown at Shea Card, Bruno defeated Zbyszko in a steel cage. He retired in 1981, but he had 3 sons. His son David, who against Bruno's wishes, wanted to be a wrestler. So Bruno came back to the WWF so that they would book his son.
Ugh.
If I come back, book my son.
That sucks.
But his son David quit several times. Like he would just walk out, and his dad just kept wrestling there, hoping that if he continued to work for him, his son would be in the good graces of the company. And I will tell you, when I met Bruno in Hamburg, he has very harsh feelings for the WWF.
I can't imagine that he wouldn't.
He does not like where the company has gone since he left. he would do a motivational speech for like 15 minutes in the ring, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Like the funny thing was I'm working the show at Hamburg Fieldhouse. I didn't know he was going to be there.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting in this locker room and I'm thinking, this is the same bench that Bruno Sammartino sat on. There's the same bench that Hulk Hogan sat on.
Yeah.
And then I look up and Bruno Sammartino walks into the locker room. And I'm like, dude, am I in your seat?
Hi.
I was like a little kid.
You?
I was like a little kid when I met him.
Yeah.
So he had a long running feud with Randy Macho Man Savage.
I love Macho Man.
Yeah, I did too. In '86, he had his last match. He teamed up with Hulk Hogan versus One Man Gang and King Kong Bundy. Bundy, also another guy I got to work with.
Oh my God, you met Ted Bundy?
No,
That's our next episode.
Notable also in 1986, he had one of his most memorable matches with Roddy Piper. He died in 2018. Between 1986 and his death, he made several appearances in independent pro wrestling companies, including Ring of Honor. I had the honor of working with him on the show at the legendary Hamburg Fieldhouse when I wrestled. I chose him from one of my favorite wrestlers because of the wrestling business. I met a lot of superstars.
Yeah.
But I was kind of the most excited when I met him. Like, he is, to me, like the godfather of wrestling.
Yeah, I'd have to agree.
And that was my first choice.
That's a good choice. I like it. I think it's good.
So what say you on number 2?
Well, so as it's been previously stated here on the show, as we talk about things and the things that we do in our free time and the things that we like, I have a lot of positive feelings about Japanese culture, gaming, music,
Books,
animes, books, manga. I have The Ring was a Japanese series.
Yeah, and that's when we did our favorite movies, or when we
did our
backstories
for horror villains.
That's the backstory that we chose. So I'm going to link that below.
And so for my second choice, I wanted to choose a modern. Like I said, I was doing modern female wrestlers, but I wanted to choose, and I mean, to be very honest, this is the person that came to mind first to me when I decided that this was going to be my parameters, is Asuka, who...
Asuka?
She's awesome.
Asuka from New York?
Asuka. She's awesome. When she, in her vignettes and when she debuted in WWE, she always wore a mask on the main roster. I think she did in NXT as well. She always wore a mask, and it was like really, really cool when she came out and she would take the mask off. And
I remember her.
It was a cool. She also had she always had the danglies.
Yes.
And stuff.
Yeah. Very Japanese.
Yes, very Japanese. Very lucha. Like
Sumi.
Yes, like Sumi Sakai. So Asuka, her birth name is, or her name is last name, first name because it's Japanese. Urai Kanako. She was born in 1981 in Osaka, Japan. And she wrestled with many promotions, freelancing for a time under the ring name Kana. Her debut was in 2004.
Debut in wrestling?
Yes.
Okay.
She was signed to WWE under NXT in 2015. Now, if you remember, I said that Alexa Bliss debuted on the main roster in 2016. Just keep that in mind as we're going through this. So the first thing I did is I listed out the promotions.
So was she an NXT wrestler too?
Yes, she started in NXT as well under developmental. So the first thing that I did in this list is I listed out some of the promotions that she wrestled in prior to WWE. And like I said, she debuted in 2004. Many of these promotions are now defunct or kind of swallowed up by other promotions that might be on here. And there were one or two of them that I really couldn't find a whole lot of information about. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And since a lot of these are Japanese promotions, I figured I would talk about them a little bit. So the first promotion that she worked with was A to Z, which is also known as Major Girls Fighting, and is defunct as of 2006.
I was reading that ATOZ.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck
That's
is
how I
ATOZ?
was. That's how I was too until I looked it up and was like, "Oh, it's A2Z." Okay, I got it now. So that went out of business 2 years after she debuted. She did not stay there very long. I think she was only there for a year. I don't think she was there for their last show. The next promotion that she wrestled at was JWP, which is Joshi Puroresu, which Joshi Puroresu is the name for women's wrestling in Japan. Puroresu, pro wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
So Joshi is women's, or I don't know if it's women's pro wrestling or girls, female. I don't know exactly what they call it because the name has. There's been a lot of debacle over what female wrestlers are called in the past couple of years, like past 10 years or so. But Joshi Puroresu is what it was called, or what it was known as, and that is defunct as of 2017. So that one made it quite a long time, but did not quite make it. Next, it came up as Neo Japan Ladies Pro Wrestling, but that promotion under that name was defunct as of 2000. And something that I thought was freaking insane about this, apparently for Neo Japan Ladies Pro Wrestling, during their last show, Ino Kyoko, who is another, she was like a really, really popular, like since the 80s, Japanese female pro wrestler in Japan. She competed in every single match on the show.
Jesus.
Every single match I was like, what the fuck?
I couldn't imagine that.
So that title was defunct as of 2000. They kind of like changed or like morphed into Neo Women's Wrestling, which went out of business then in 2010. So technically, Asuka wrestled for Neo Women's Wrestling.
Okay. But
it came up as Neo Japan Ladies Pro Wrestling because that was its original name, I guess. Next, she was in Pro Wrestling Wave. This promotion is still alive, and if you go and you look up their former roster list, they have an impressive list of alumni. They have, now we probably, if you're not familiar with Japanese wrestling, you probably wouldn't know many of the names, but some of them do cross over with some promotions that you might know from here. Like a lot of female wrestlers from Japan have worked on AEW shows. A lot of them have worked on Ring of Honor shows. Yeah. They have a whole, or they used to, they had like a whole like segment of their show that was just dedicated to their female wrestlers. So a lot of them go back and forth through there, but Pro Wrestling Wave, as far as I can see, is still active today.
I've actually watched Pro Wrestling Wave.
She did hold a title there as well. She held several titles in these other places. Next, we have Renai Joshi Puroresu, which I could find almost no information on. The best information I could get is that they were active up until at least 2018. I didn't see anything saying they were defunct, but what I did find was a lot of lucha information is given when you Google the Reina Joshi Puroresu. When you Google that, a lot of lucha information, like female lucha, comes up. And I was really confused, but from everything that I could find about it, it was 100% Joshi Puroresu, and it was not a lucha.
They might have shared talent with like AAA in Mexico.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. because the one website that came up was all in, I believe, Spanish. But that's the best information I could find about that. So maybe they aren't the same anymore. Maybe they conglomerated with a lucha. I'm not sure, but that's the promotion. The next promotion she was a part of was a Canadian promotion, which still works shows, which is Smash Wrestling, or Smash. She also held a championship there. And they, like I said, are still working shows. She was a part of Wrestling New Classic. This is considered the sister promotion to Reina Joshi Puroresu, but this I did find is defunct as of 2014. So they were considered the sister promotion, and one of them was still doing shows up until 2018, the other one closed in 2014. So I'm wondering if maybe one of them had more lucha wrestlers.
I don't know.
And then they kind of, I don't know.
I've heard of Smash, and I've heard of new Pro Wrestling Wave.
Yeah, Pro Wrestling Wave I've heard of, yeah. I think I've seen a lot of videos from that because I tend to look up a lot of high flyer videos because I think they're really like cool to watch. And like they give you like that little jump in your stomach. Because it's like scary. Everybody's up in the air doing stuff.
Yeah.
So you do get a lot of Japanese wrestlers because a lot of Japanese wrestlers have that kind of style. So during these runs, her achievements are as follows. These are the championships that she held, essentially. She was JWP Openweight champ.
Whoop, whoop.
She was the Wave Tag Team champ, and obviously a tag team.
Whoop, whoop.
And then this is the one that, when I say that there was a lot of debacle over what female wrestlers were called, this is a famous one from a couple years ago. She was also Smash Diva champ.
Whoop, whoop.
We don't call them divas anymore. But that made me laugh because that's also what WWE had been calling them for years. I mean, probably since back in the 90s.
Yeah.
All of the games that I think I've ever played, all the wrestling games, it's always divas. Of course, they stopped that now. But so when Asuka signed on to NXT, she was the first Japanese female to be signed with the company, the entire company, in over 20 years.
Wow.
The last Japanese female to be signed before her was Bull Nanako in 1994. She was not signed until
Unico.
Nanako. She was not signed until 2015, so it had been 21 years since they had signed a Japanese female to their roster. Literally insane.
Yeah. And I think that when I mentioned earlier when you said I didn't watch female wrestling much.
Yeah.
I do enjoy the Japanese female wrestling.
Because it's so different.
Yes.
It's so different. And so we'll get into more of this information in a second here, but
to Mikey meander ahead.
Yeah, Mikey meander ahead. He's meandering through. But that's why I like that diversity, and I wish that now there is more. But at the time, like, when this was happening, was a time that WWE was... It was... I haven't honestly watched it very much since probably 2018 or 2019. I watch it every now and then, if I can catch Raw or SmackDown or whatever on. And I guess, like, now that stuff's on Peacock.
Yeah.
Which I didn't know before. Get that in there. Which I didn't know before.
You almost pulled that right out.
Yeah, I got it. I didn't, though.
Whoa.
Almost. So, you have, like, this period of time where WWE is kind of, like, in a lull. At the time, they were doing a lot of things with talent that didn't make sense. They were getting rid of people that it didn't make sense to. They were keeping people it didn't make sense to. Around the same time as when Shinsuke Nakamura debuted, and I kind of grazed over this. I do not like Shinsuke Nakamura. He's also a Japanese wrestler, and I didn't like his gimmick. It made me really dislike him, but everyone else loved him, and I don't know why. So, I feel like she came at a good time. And she's still wrestling with them, so that's good. So, Asuka is a baller. And of course, she won the NXT Women's Championship. She holds the longest run in history, which is 510 days. That's 1 year, 4 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days.
What?
Which is 9 days longer than that guy that you mentioned. So, when she was finally moved to the main roster in 2017, which is 2 years after she debuted on NXT, whereas Alexa Bliss and Bayley, who were also two notable female wrestlers that moved to the main roster around a similar time, each had 3 years under their belt in NXT before they were debuted. So I'm like, when she was finally debuted to the main roster in 2017, I just remember everyone thinking, it's about time. Like, it's about fucking time. Like, when you think about it, she was only there for, it was like a little over a year. Like a little over a year. And like I said, the likes of Bayley J and Alexa Bliss were both there for about 3 years each. So it just goes to show you exactly how good she is, because everybody's like, oh my god. Like, it was almost kind of sad, because you just felt like she was outperforming all these other, all this other good talent. There aren't like too many, female wrestlers, good female wrestlers can be hard to come by.
Yes.
And I have the same feeling, whereas like I usually just don't like watching a whole lot of female wrestling, which is why I decided to choose 2 female wrestlers that I really enjoy watching. But she was just outperforming everyone, even people who were not necessarily, performing badly. Like, I just feel like she stepped everybody up. Like, she was just so much better than everybody else. So we were all just kind of relieved when she finally went to main roster, because we were like, are they just going to keep her down here in this stupid, 2-year-long run with this dumb NXT championship?
Well, part of the problem could have been that she was too good for her own good.
And, that might have been it, too.
If they took her up, who's she going to compete against? And she's just going to outshine everybody.
And she already did.
And they might have had storylines in progress that they didn't want to...
And I think that was part of the problem. But it always, whenever they move somebody to the main roster, it kind of feels like, well, fuck the NXT roster, fuck their storylines. That's always how it's felt, which is a shame. And there are some people, like, after this debacle happened, where everybody was just kind of like, people were literally so angry, they were, like, going to Twitter and being like, move Asuka. You moved Bayley. Move Asuka. And it was a what the hell moment. Like, why are we still waiting? So since we know she's so awesome, I love her so much, she's awesome. She went to the main roster in 2017. She also became a Triple Crown champ, where, again, Bayley and Alexa Bliss had already been on the main roster for probably 2 years by this point, by the time that they got almost 3 years. They were there for a year longer than her, because she became Triple Crown champ. Of course, we know you need to have that tag team. The tag team that she faced was Alexa Bliss's tag team. So she took the title that got Alexa Bliss Triple Crown champ, like, as soon as she possibly could, pretty much. She took the title that got Alexa Bliss her Triple Crown champion to get her own Triple Crown champion pretty much as soon as she could. So she debuts in August 2019. Asuka teamed up with Kairi Sane in her debut. Kairi Sane is another really good female Japanese wrestler. At this point, I wasn't really watching a whole lot, honestly. After 2018, it just kind of felt like there was like I said earlier, like they just do the talent dirty so much, and it just gets hard to watch sometimes. Watching them being put in, matches that you don't think that they belong in, or, whatever it might be, and that's everybody's opinion. Which is why, if I wasn't enjoying it, I don't have to watch it at that point.
Right.
So I wasn't watching it for a while. So she did team up with Kairi Sane, and I have watched Kairi Sane wrestle. I think she's pretty good. The tag team was known as the Kabuki
I
Warriors.
actually remember the Kabuki Warriors.
I think I probably sent videos of them too because they had the masks and stuff, I'm pretty sure. And I think that's really cool. So they did lose the first match to the Iconics in August. Yes, August. They immediately took a hiatus. And again, the Iconics are Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. So after they lose this match, they immediately take a hiatus. They return in September. They had a match with, I don't remember who it was, but they had one match. And then in October of that same year, they took the titles from the Iconics. There were some very, very good matches in all of the rivalries that I've seen Asuka in, including the crappy, shitty ones that we might not have enjoyed as much. Maybe we did, who knows, in NXT. They were all good matches, and she is, and I don't know if it stems from being a native speaker of a different language, but she's just a very, stoic, and she doesn't talk a lot, she's very stoic and quiet in that way, where, maybe she was considered a heel sometimes, because it's one of those things where it's just I just got out of this, 1.5 year championship reign, and I'm gonna take another one, is kind of how it felt when she stepped up onto the main roster. And she's still going strong. She's still wrestling for them. She's still doing some great stuff. You can still find really good videos and stuff. I have to find some of the ones from before WWE to show you, because it's just insane. The kind of stuff that you can do, you can't really do in WWE.
No, and I've watched some Japanese female and Japanese wrestling to begin with. It's so different.
It's so different. It's almost slow at first, that strong style. Shinsuke Nakamura does that. So slow.
Well, that's when I met Eddie Guerrero. He basically told me that if I went to Japan, I would be a big thing over there, because Vader was huge, because he's a big guy who could actually wrestle, he could move.
Right.
Here, Tiki Dog, he's just annoying me. I don't know what he's crying. I don't know what he's crying about.
And he's not gonna get it. But that is that's my second gal.
So my number 2 actually fits in with my number 1. Is another legendary wrestler who has passed now. Roddy Piper. Of course. And I just saw this today. Do you remember the movie Grown Ups?
Yes.
So when they're all sitting at the pool and that buff guy comes walking over to the ladies?
Yeah.
Where does he say he's from?
He says from Saskatoon.
Yeah. He says Saskatoon, Saskatchewan.
Saskatoon, Canada.
Yeah. So Roddy Piper was born April 17th, 1954.
I only know how to pronounce those because I have watched this YouTuber for a decade that's from Saskatoon.
I'm sure that's where that guy said he was from.
So
if I'm wrong, leave a comment.
Roast him.
Roderick George Toombs was his born name. He started professional wrestling at the age of 15 in Winnipeg against Larry Hennig in the AWA, and he lost his first match in 10 seconds.
Big ouch.
His friends played the bagpipes during his entrance while he was handing out dandelions. I don't know why he didn't. I don't get that. Meanwhile, the ring announcer had to announce something, but he didn't know anything about the kid that was coming out to the ring.
He's just like this kid.
Yeah, all he knew was the guy playing the bagpipes. His name was Roddy. So he announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, here comes Roddy the Piper," and that gave birth to his name, Roddy Piper. From 1973 to 1975, Piper was a jobber in the AWA, and NWA Central States territory in Kansas City. Much like San Martino, he had a background in amateur wrestling. He was also a boxer. He won the Golden Gloves Championship, and he had a black belt in judo. So he's no slouch. He knows his shit. I believe, and many other people agree with me, he may have been the greatest heel pro in pro wrestling ever. of all time. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2005. Through the 70s, he was a jobber, like I said, in AWA, NWA, and Von Erich's Big Time Wrestling.
Interesting.
Where he cemented his heel persona. Like, he perfected it there. Piper was, by 1975, he was a top villain in NWA Hollywood Wrestling. In 77, he started working for NWA San Francisco, as well as continuing with NWA Hollywood, and he became one of the most hated villains. He had a long-time feud with Chavo Guerrero Sr. Piper would come to the ring playing the next Mexican national anthem on the bagpipes.
God.
And he would continuously insult the Mexican community. And, like, L.A. is very heavy Mexican population.
Yeah.
During the 3 years of this feud, the entire Guerrero family stood against Piper. And Piper would wear a Conqueror of Guerreros t-shirt to the ring. They had a hair match, and Piper lost it, and he had to shave his head. He also lost a loser must leave town match. What happened was the next day he shows up under a hood as the Masked Canadian.
Oh, my God.
So his first match back, first televised match, the Masked Canadian teams up with Chavo against the American Tag Team Champions. So, of course, later in the match, he turned on Chavo.
Of course.
And they started feuding. After several months, the Masked Canadian was unmasked by Hector Guerrero. 78, he left the Southern California promotion, or the California promotions, and he went to the Pacific Northwest territory, where he teamed up with Tim Brooks, Rick Martel, and Mike Popovich to win the NWA Northwest Tag Team Champion over Lord Jonathan Boyd and Playboy Buddy Rose. So these are names that are historic in wrestling.
Right.
So in 79 or 80, I'm not sure which it was, he ventured into the Mid-Atlantic territory, and he beat Jack Briscoe for the Mid-Atlantic title, and then Ric Flair for the U.S. title belt, which turned into a huge feud.
Good.
They say he showed up late for a show, and he got fired, and then was blackballed. Now, people dispute this, but he wrote this in his book.
Yeah.
This is what happened. He bumped around for a while working other historic NWA territories, but he eventually moved back to Jim Crockett Promotions, which his territory had a bunch of different promotions. They were all billed as Jim Crockett Promotions, but on their posters and tickets, they would have these different names, and one was Championship Wrestling, one was All-Star Wrestling, one was East Coast Wrestling, one was Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, Mid-Atlantic Championship Sports, Wide World Wrestling.
I remember that.
NWA Pro Wrestling, Worldwide Wrestling, NWA Worldwide Wrestling.
That's so weird.
And NWA World Championship Wrestling. So he just used all those names, I guess, marketing-wise in different areas. Piper feuded with greats like Sergeant Slaughter, Ric Flair, Greg the Hammer Valentine. The Valentine feud culminated in a dog collar match at the very first Starrcade.
That's amazing.
During this match, Piper got hit in the head with the chain from the dog collar, and it broke his eardrum, and it caused Piper to lose his 50% of his hearing permanently in that ear. In 1984-ish, I say, Vince Mann the Younger, Vince Jr., contacted Piper to come to WWF full time. Piper said, "I'll come, but right now it'll only be part time because I want to finish serving out my contract with Jim Crockett. He's been good to me," which he did. So, 83 and 84-ish, he was running dates in both WWF and Crockett's promotion. Piper started as a manager due to his injury with Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. Later that same year, in 1984, he was given the interview segment Piper's Pit, which Anybody who has listened to this show
2 episodes ago.
2 episodes ago, and I'm going to tell the story again because it's my story. I'll tell it if I want. He became part of. He became a iconic part of 80s pro wrestling. Like, you can't think of the 80s without thinking of Rowdy Roddy Piper or Piper's Pit. One of the guests on Piper's Pit, or one of the earliest guests on Piper's Pit, was Greg the Hammer Valentine, who had just arrived in WWF. Now, it's rare now, then, and always for WWF to talk about feuds that happened between wrestlers before they came to WWF. But they made a rare reference to the history that they had together in rival organizations prior to their stint with WWF. And they hinted at maybe rekindling that feud.
Okay.
But nothing ever came of it. The most iconic Piper's Pit was that when Jimmy Superfly Snuka interview, where Piper started to insult Snuka's Polynesian heritage, bringing out pineapples, bananas, and dropping coconuts onto the table. And he said, "Here, let me make you feel at home." He smashed a coconut over Snuka's head and smashed a banana in his face. He then whipped Snuka with his belt. This started a long-time feud between the two. And from what I remember about this happening is Snuka didn't know it was going to happen.
Oh.
And it was kind of impromptu. And he really got hurt. Like, not physically hurt that he couldn't walk or anything, but just, like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But
like, ow.
When this happened, I was in the crowd this night. And I was sitting just to the side of Piper's Pit. And it just so happened that Lovebug was sitting on the other side of Piper's Pit. We didn't know each other. We found this out telling the story at the training center. But I actually got coconut juice on me that night from the smashing of the coconut over Superfly's head.
The smashing of the coconut.
This was not the last time he smashed a coconut either. We'll get to that in a minute.
Oh, God.
So Piper also insulted Bruno Sammartino, which led to a feud between the two, ending in a steel cage match, which Piper lost.
Of course.
Piper and Hogan had what will become one of the greatest feuds in wrestling history. It involved Cyndi Lauper. Rowdy Roddy Piper kicked her in the head.
Oh, my God.
And then Piper attacked Captain Lou Albano. And Hogan was the ultimate babyface, and this was an injustice that had to be recompensed. He had to seek revenge on this, and he did. Yeah. In 1985, an MTV broadcast, The War to Settle the Score, featured a main event matchup between Piper and Hogan. Hogan came to the ring with Lou Albano, Cyndi Lauper, and Mr. T.
Why was Mr. T there?
Mr. T was doing stuff in and out of wrestling at the time. This angle eventually set up a WrestleMania 2 boxing match between Mr. T and Piper, which Piper lost by DQ because he body slammed Mr. T. Piper's Pit was like a key to setting up a lot of different angles over the years. And it was key to setting up the Hogan-Andre the Giant feud. And it's one of the most, that match between the two is one of the most memorable matches at WWF. When Hogan picks up Andre the Giant and body slam.
It's so insane to think about that because Andre the Giant was like 7 feet tall.
But what happened here was weird. Hogan had won something, and he was getting a trophy for something, and they did it on Piper's Pit. And Andre the Giant came out to congratulate him. And when he was shaking his hand, he like squoze Hogan's hand a little too hard. Well, Hogan, thinking, well, maybe he's a little jealous. I'm going to congratulate him on something. So he gets Andre a trophy, and the trophy's just a little bit smaller than his. And I guess Andre gets pissed off, and that's where the feud started, which I thought was funny as shit.
It's like such a simple feud, but it's like so believable.
So in 1992, at the Royal Rumble, Piper defeated the Mountie for his first and only Intercontinental Championship, which he lost shortly after to Bret Hart. For the next few years, Piper was in and out of WWF. He did some different roles, Piper's Pits, some commentary, and in '96 at Halloween Havoc, Piper joined WCW and rekindled the feud with Hogan.
Yeah, because Hulk Hogan was also going back and forth.
Yeah, that's the time when Hogan jumped over before the buyout. Once the buyout happened, he came back, and so Piper joined forces with Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen to battle the NWO, which was Hogan at the time.
Right.
He then had a short feud with Flair, and then he faded. In October '97, he returned to WCW, faced Hogan in a steel cage, and over the next few years, he was again in and out, different roles. They were doing, oh no, they weren't doing it there, but he goes to another organization, does a Piper's Pit there. When WCW sold to WWF, which is the darkest time in pro wrestling history, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Piper returned to WWE in 2003, again feuding with Hogan. And then, if anybody remembers Rikishi.
I remember Rikishi.
He was supposedly a relative, because they're both Islanders, Polynesian, of Superfly Snuka. Piper smashed a coconut over Rikishi's head. And I think Rikishi paid him back with something. I think he smashed a coconut over Piper's head. And
paid him back with blood.
Yeah. Piper did an interview with HBO Real Sports with Brian Gumbel, where Piper discussed the darker side of the wrestling business. After which, WWE decided to stop using Piper because he was not under contract. He was just on a day-to-day basis. So Piper claimed that HBO took some of his comments out of context and it made wrestling work worse than it really was. And I think that was the interview where they were talking about steroid use and stuff like that.
Probably. This is like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
So that's like, I mean...
That's the time when that stuff came out.
What's Jeff Hardy doing?
Yeah.
Still...
2004, Piper appeared on TNA, Total Nonstop Action, with some Piper's Pit segments. He had a feud with Vince Russo that spilled over to be a little bit more legit than anyone would have expected. They got ugly. Now, I don't really remember this. I didn't watch a whole lot of TNA, but apparently it got nasty. Piper in 2005 was inducted into WWE Hall of Fame, and he wrestled at Wrestle Reunion. It was Piper, Jimmy Valiant, and Superfly Snuka teaming up against Colonel De Beers, Cowboy Bob Orton, and Playboy Buddy Rose. Piper was brought back into the WWF fold, had some mini feuds with the Ortons, Cowboy Bob and Randy Orton. That ran over the next year.
Randy Orton.
On and off. Over the next 8 years, Piper would make appearances, get involved with different things, but never made any long runs. It's my opinion that he was being used by WWE because they were bleeding viewership since Vince bought the WCW. There was no competition anymore. WWE got stale, and they leaned on the old timers to excite viewers again. But they never stuck with it. They wanted to have that new wave form of wrestling that they had going on, and they just never held to it. They wanted to raise up the younger wrestlers, which there's nothing wrong with that.
No, but like if...
Understand it was the storylines, the good storylines, it was the feuds, and it was the characters that made WWE. It wasn't big muscles and jumping off the top rope.
Right.
Until 2015, it was when it was announced that Piper was no longer under contract with WWE. July 31st, 2015, at age 61, Rowdy Roddy Piper, the greatest villain ever in the history of pro wrestling, he died in his sleep of cardiac arrest. So, I think I picked two people who had a huge impact on the business itself.
Yeah.
And you picked two people who have a huge impact on women's wrestling.
I did. And I mean, like, that's not to say that they're the first ones who have ever made an impact. Like we mentioned Chyna, we mentioned Lita. I mean, even Stephanie McMahon tried to do her part. Not very well.
She does it as an executive, like, like even in
she's not supposed to be good.
in front of a camera, she does the executive role, and
Yes.
I always appreciated that.
It needs to be done by someone, and I think with Vince doesn't really appear anymore. He's also going old and senile, but that could be part of it.
I think they just need someone from the family to be forefront. I always liked Vinnie Mac. I always liked him.
There was a part of me that wish Shane would have gotten...
Or Shane O'Mac, not Vinnie Mac.
Yeah,
Shane O'Mac.
Yeah.
I always liked Shane.
There was a part of me that wish Shane would have gotten it, because part of the brand split was a Shane versus Stephanie thing. Was the part of the brand split that we just talked about, the second brand split. I don't know if the first one was like that too, but it was a Shane versus Stephanie thing. So like it was supposed to be like whoever's better gets the company. And I guess Stephanie was just better. But I think Stephanie was only better because the idea... I think Vince always kind of wanted to hand it off to Stephanie and Triple H. I think that was just the idea, like the thing. But I don't know. Like they'll still bring... They were still bringing Shane out sometimes, and it was... You wouldn't know, and then it would be... Shane money. Yeah.
I actually enjoy watching him work. The last time I watched a WrestleMania was when he came. Remember?
But yeah, that was the one. Wasn't it a steel cage match?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was on top of the cage.
Yeah. I just think he has done a lot for the family.
He was quick.
Yeah.
He was maneuverable. He had like good maneuverability. I think he was a pretty decent wrestler.
But, you know, we talked about why we picked the wrestlers we picked. It could have been 100 other guys.
Yeah.
For
And
different reasons.
if I wouldn't have put such a stringent guideline down for myself, there could have been like 1,000 people in here.
Well, like you made your guideline, female wrestlers.
Right.
I made my guideline, who impacted the business.
And you.
Yeah.
The most.
And Roddy Piper and Bruno Sammartino absolutely did it for me.
If I would have chosen people that impacted the business, I would have chosen The Rock because I love The Rock. And I think out of every wrestler from my youth, he's probably my all-time favorite. Like, any WWE wrestler.
I'd love to know who Bob would have picked.
I would have too. I feel like
because he's in the mindset of me with
you would probably have similar answers.
Yeah. So I would have told him what to think.
And he'd just be like, yep, you're right, Mikey. I love Bob.
So, we took on our favorite wrestlers all time. Now you go take on the world.
Our podcasts exist because of listeners like you. To find other great shows, head over to theden.show. Thanks for listening.
Hold on, stop.
Welcome back to the Shit Show 2.0.
Okay, Boomer.
Damn millennials. Wow.
Did not know that. Even flirters who are obviously mentally ill.
You want to be my wife?
Oh, this is gonna go downhill real quick.